For the longest time, I have been in the pursuit of finishing my horse. But recently, Reddit has me questioning whether I even want a finished horse or not. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Strong in the Saddle. I'm your host, Katrina. Recently, I have gotten into Reddit. I've never used Reddit, and I would say within the last couple of months, I've kind of gone down various Reddit subreddit rabbit holes, and I recently got into the horse subreddit, and there's been some interesting topics, including the one about whether or not your horse is broke. So the post that I was looking at specifically was in the horses subreddit, and the question was, what would be considered a generally finished horse? And then this original poster went on with this question: would you consider a horse who naturally collects, knows walk, trot, canter, /lope, gallop, stop, and back up, responds and yields to leg aids and the bridle, is exposed to various scenes, objects, noises, and it's relaxed through all of this, has finished groundwork such as yielding all four quarters, lunging, leading, and backing up on the ground, a finished horse in basic training? And she includes this cute picture of her horse. And then I went through and read some of the comments, and there was some interesting feedback that this person got from their question. So one person said, I'd say that's a broke horse, although folks' definition of broke depends on discipline area and their own experience level. A finished horse means they're finished in a particular discipline. Example, a finished reiner means you could take them and compete in a reining class tomorrow. Someone responded to that comment saying, this is exactly it. These days people think the basics equals finished, but that's just a well-broke horse. Finished to me is all the buttons and proven success in its discipline. So I thought that was really interesting, and I definitely agree with that. I think there is some confusion between what is a broke horse and what is a finished horse. And I very much agree with that commenter saying a broke horse is just that, a broke horse. It can do the various basic training things that we would expect from a horse under saddle. And that original comment listed all of those things. Whereas a finished horse is finished in something more specific, whether that be, reining, cutting, jumping, dressage, trail horse, like finished in one of those specific disciplines. And it goes above and beyond just being a broke horse. And I'll also just read some additional comments that I thought were interesting. Someone said, what you described is a horse that's trained in the most general sense. When you see ads for a finished horse, it doesn't have language about going in whatever direction you want. Instead, it's geared more towards being finished in a particular discipline. Someone else said, finished means you can go show tomorrow in the event they are finished in. The horse that you're describing, I would advertise it as a prospect that is broke, but ready to finish in your chosen direction. Someone else said, and I thought this was interesting, that's just a normal good citizen that has zero training in any discipline. And then I came across this comment that was a bit lengthier, but I do want to read it because it's going to be good for discussion. So this person actually, they say they took it from someone else, but they really liked it. And it's actually a numbered or bulleted list of things that they would say this is what a broke horse is. So I'll read it and I might add in my 2 cents here and there. So number 1, no buck, bite, kick, or bolt while being handled. This means no biting or kicking other horses or people who get in his space on the trail or while tied up for tacking up. Number 2 is easy to catch. Easy with the farrier and vet, lifts feet, and tolerates grooming with minimal fuss. Number 3, is it ground ties at least decently? I'm going to interject here, ground tying. I would say I would consider a horse broke even if it did not ground tie. Ground tying is very much nice to have, although I would not say that a horse that doesn't know how to ground tie isn't broke. I don't really know if Junior ground ties. He wouldn't move around a lot, but I don't think he's specifically trained to ground tie, but he's definitely very, very broke. So I kind of disagree with number 3. Number 4, follows easily when hand walking, simple to lunge, calm for groundwork when alone or with other horses. Number 5, can be ridden near loose dogs, umbrellas, strollers, cars, and vehicles with sirens. Number 6, forward walk, rhythmic trot, canters both leads, listens to all the aids, and can ride off leg and seat and in both snaffles and leverage bits. 7, tolerates mistakes like an unbalanced seat, reins inconsistent lengths, flopping feet, repositions in the saddle, clumsy tacking up or removing tack. Number 8, can sit for 3 or 4 days between rides without getting too sour or too spunky for the beginner to ride. This one I would also argue with, I think. So, especially if we look towards our more high-level, higher-bred horses, if you leave them for 3 to 4 days, especially if they're younger, they're going to be full of a lot of energy, right? It's no different than a kid that's been pent up in school all day. When they get out of school, all they want to do is run around like a maniac, right? Horses are no different. And I don't think having lots of energy takes away from a horse being broke. I think that's just having energy, right? There's no relation to being broke, I would say. And also a horse can have a lot of energy and still behave, right? So that one's a little bit, I would like to maybe add a little bit to that. Number 9, loads and unloads in any trailer, ramp or no ramp, straight or slant. I'm okay with that one. I know some horses just have whatever kind of experience in a trailer and just do not like certain trailers, which I don't really want to fault a horse for that. And again, loading in a trailer, like it's like, what are we looking at when we say broke, right? Like, are we just looking in terms of riding? Then even things like all this groundwork stuff, like standing for the farrier, we don't really care about if we're just looking at riding it. But if we're looking at overall, yes, I think a broke horse should be able to load into a trailer. There might be some trailers where a horse just won't go in, and I'm not going to fault a horse for that because some trailers are a little scary looking. Number 10, no or minimal maintenance, good feet, neither a too easy or hard keeper. I disagree with this one a lot. So we'll just start with no or minimal maintenance. This is no reflection on whether a horse is broke or not. And especially if you have a horse that was at a very high level of performance when they were younger, they were rode very, very hard, and now have issues now that they're older. You can still have a very broke horse who has issues to the point where they need maintenance, right? Like, again, there's no reflection on how broke they are. I don't think that, if a horse requires special shoeing or hock injections or like really frequent body work, I don't think you can fault them for that and say they're not broke because they require that maintenance. That doesn't make sense to me. Having good feet, again, that's totally a genetic thing. You can have a horse with terrible feet that is still super, super broke. Is it ideal? No, we want a horse to have good feet. And then the whole too easy or hard keeper, again, nice to have a horse that is just middle of the road, doesn't get too fat, doesn't get too skinny, but again, no reflection on whether they are well broke or not. And then the last item on their list was expressive, or at least a clear communicator. Having a stoic horse can be hard for a beginner because they might not notice pain or discomfort. Again, I don't really think this one is fair if we are judging whether a horse is broke or not. I would say, it's great to have a horse that's a clear communicator, who's a bit more expressive. Junior, for example, is very, very stoic. He has very, very little expression other than like the melancholic Eeyore kind of vibe that he gives off. But you have to go back to just like the evolution of horses. Horses have learned through the years being in the wild that if they show that they are in pain or they are hurt in some way, if a predator is monitoring them and a predator sees that this guy has something going on with a foot, I'm going to go after him because I know he's likely going to be slower than his buddy over there who's feeling fine, right? So horses have learned to hide pain as much as they can as a way of self-preservation. And they still do that today. You know, you might have a horse who will lope on both leads for you, even if like one of their hip joints is completely out of whack and it's causing them pain. And yes, that is very, very hard for a beginner to pick up on. But again, I do not think that is a reflection of how well broke your horse is or not. That's just a matter of like evolved self-preservation nature. Like it has nothing to do with whether your horse can walk, trot, lope on the correct lead, when cued, all of those things. I think they're completely different things that we're talking about here. So this list was useful. I do think it needs some tweaking if it was going to be for my liking of this is what I would classify as a broke horse. So the initial question in this Reddit post was, would this generally be considered a finished horse? And I think we can say the answer is no. We already discussed this, that a horse that is finished in a specific discipline. And so we'll look at my horses for a minute. So I have Junior and I have Diesel. We'll start with Diesel. So Diesel is reining bred. He's had his basic training. I would say Diesel is broke, or like 92.7% broke. He's not finished. He has had the start of reining training, but he has not finished in reining. I could not go to a show today and do reining with Diesel. I could go to an ag horse show, just like a general amateur horse show, and do that. So in that sense, we could maybe consider him a finished amateur horse show horse, maybe. He would be great for 4-H. We could consider him a finished 4-H horse, maybe. But as far as like finished for reining, no, Diesel is not finished. If we go to Junior, on the other hand, so I purchased Junior when he was 6, and at the time, he would have been considered a finished cutting horse. He had competed in cutting at various events. Like, he was a finished cutter. Junior has not competed in cutting or even like practiced cutting in almost 20 years. So at this point, although he once was finished, I would say now he's not, because I could not go to a cutting today and compete in cutting with Junior. We've lost that finishing touch, I would say. So that's something to keep in mind too, that you might have a finished horse today, but that doesn't mean you're going to have a finished horse in that horse 2 or 3 years from now. It very much depends on what you're doing with them, the education you're continuing to give them, the exposure to things that you're giving to them, on whether or not they will maintain that status. It's not like you punch that card and you have it for life. Another way to look at this is a Venn diagram. So for those of you who don't know, a Venn diagram would have like 2 circles and they overlap in the middle, but there are spaces on the sides that don't overlap. And we could look at that when it comes to being broke versus finished. So if we have one circle that's broke and one circle that's finished, in the broke circle, we can have the horses just broke, but they're not finished. So they're not in the overlapping part of the circle, they're on the outer part of the circle. Or we could have the finished circle, we can have a horse that's finished, but not broke, which I'll talk about in a minute. And then in the middle, we have those horses that are broke and finished. So we'll start with broke but not finished. Broke but not finished, we've already talked about. That would be a horse that has all the basic training, good to go. They're like ready to where you could start putting finishing touches on them for a specific discipline. But as of right now, they do not have a specific discipline that they're trained for. They're just a general broke horse. On the other extreme, this might seem counterintuitive, we have a finished horse who is not broke. And the horses that come to mind for me when I'm thinking about horses like that would be race horses and barrel horses. So if we go back to our list on some of the things, no buck, bite, kick, or bolt when being handled. We know a lot of those racier bred horses, they're a mess to handle on the ground. They're dancing on the end of the lead rope. They might try to bite you. Like, you don't want to get them close to other horses because they might kick. Like, they're just monsters on the ground. Definitely wouldn't ground tie. Might spook at a bunch of stuff like we listed here, like loose dogs, umbrellas, strollers, vehicles. They're probably going to spook at stuff like that. They are very, very sensitive. So like, you know, if your rein is uneven or you're not balanced in the saddle, they're not going to tolerate that. They're definitely going to be a handful if you leave them for multiple days in a row without giving them some sort of exercise. You know, so we have barrel horses and race horses that I think of. And particularly like race horses, those are not traditionally broke, right? Like if you pull on the reins of a racehorse, that means to them go faster. That does not mean stop. They likely don't have any sort of like cueing of specific leads. It's more like we walk or we are running full tilt. They don't have a sense of maybe like that nice lower set head, nice collection, and a nice like rocking horse lope. None of that. And same with barrel horses. Like there's very specific things that they can do. They can nail that barrel pattern, but in terms of like all the things we listed at the start of this episode, they don't check all the boxes. So in that case, like they can get the job done. They can run however long the races that they need to run. They can run the barrel pattern, but they're not broke. So they would be considered a finished race horse or a finished barrel horse, but they are not broke. They are not broke. Regardless of what you might try to tell me, they are not broke. Some are. Some barrel horses are broke, yes. A lot of them are not. So that's the one side of that circle. And then I said, as in the middle, we have horses that are broke and they are finished. So there's a lot of performance horses that fall in this category. If you have a reiner, they are broke and they are finished. If you have a cutter, they are broke, they are finished. If you have a dressage horse, they are, like for the most part, these horses are going to be both broke and finished. And I thought it was just kind of interesting to think about it that way and kind of consider like, where does your horse fall within this Venn diagram? Where are they currently and where would you like them to be? And again, taking it back to my own horses. So Junior is broke, not finished. I am perfect with that. He's retired. I have no expectations for him anymore. As long as he's happy, healthy, and just behaves nice when I'm working with him, we are good. Diesel. When I first bought Diesel, I was fully intent on making him a finished reiner. That was the plan. I was going to do these amateur open horse shows, and then we were heading to Reining Alberta shows. We were going to finish him, and it was just going to be awesome. 2 years later, I do not really have that vision for him anymore. What I do want instead is I want him to be really, really broke. And I'm talking about, like, I've been thinking a lot about, so we know all these like famous clinicians, and a lot of them have like their horse, and it's the horse that they've spent hours and hours and hours working on, and they bring them to a clinic or some sort of demonstration, and these horses are like, wow. Like, I think of, so we have like Stacy Westfall, her horse Roxy, who she did the bareback and bridleless ride with. Or I think about when I used to watch Clinton Anderson's DVDs, he had his horse Mindy. I wanted Mindy so bad. She was just like that chunky quarter horse build, and she was just like, yes sir, what do you want me to do? Let me do this cool thing that you're asking me to do. Like all these clinicians, or a lot of them, have that like one horse that is like really, really broke, can do cool things, is just like the perfect horse. I want that to be Diesel. I don't care if he's finished in a discipline, and you know, he's young, maybe that'll change, but right now I do not care if he's finished. I want him to be the best, brokest horse you can imagine. That is my goal right now, just going for broke with him. I am so excited about it. I know he has the potential. He's athletic, he's young, he's super smart. Yeah, I'm just really excited for that. I never thought I would be excited for that. You know, after spending so many years like being honed in on barrel racing, and then thinking I was going to be honed in on reining, like always having that specific competition goal, and now like having this flip of a switch in my mind of like, no, I just want him like the coolest, like clinician-y type horse that you can imagine. Like this horse that I've spent so many hours working on, and you can tell like he is just cool. And like if I ever have kids, they're gonna take him to 4-H and he's gonna blow everyone out of the water. Like I had crappy horses in 4-H, like they were just bottom of the barrel, got the job done, don't get me wrong, but we're not like Diesel at all. And like to imagine my kids on a super cool, very broke horse like that just makes me like so excited. But yeah, that is the goal with Diesel. We are going for broke. We don't care about being finished, and I'm super excited about it. So I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on this and what you think about the whole broke versus finished discussion. Do you guys kind of agree with my line of thinking? Am I completely out in left field? I'd love to hear from you, so drop them in the comments, send me a message on Instagram. I am everywhere at Strong in the Saddle, and until next time, remember, it's always a good day to ride.